Uh, Good morning, everyone. My name is Amin Johar. I will be the moderator for this panel. I was picked out very last minute, asked to just ask a few questions. So before we get into the nitty gritties of the discussion, I think like it would be useful for me to just introduce all the speakers once. So first we have Malvika. Okay, thank you. First, we have Malvika, who's a lead. Also, apologies in case I'm just looking at my screen. I'm not distracted. I have some of my notes here, so that's all I'm referring to. Sorry about that. Malvika is a leading expert in digital integrated pest management and biological control with over 25 years of experience in sustainable crop protection. She is currently the global team leader for digital product usage at CABI, which is CAB International, an intergovernmental nonprofit, and heads the PlantWise Plus program and also leads the digital product usage under the PlantWise Plus program at CABI. She leads digital tools for farmer advisory services across multiple countries with a focus on inclusion for marginalized groups, especially rural women. Her expertise spans across biological control, microbial pesticides, regulatory compliance, and a range of similar affiliated issues. And she has worked around with significant collaborators in the ecosystem like the Food and Agricultural Organization or the FAO. Then we have Nathaniel Ofori, who is the Digital Innovation Manager at Farm Radio International based in Accra in Ghana. With a background in applied statistics and computer engineering, he's the main technocrat on the panel today. He specializes in developing innovative digital solutions that enhance the impact of radio and communication technologies for rural communities across Africa. And his work focuses on integrating AI, strengthening community engagement, and amplifying local voices to improve access to critical information for smallholder farmers and underserved populations. And lastly, we have Elliot Jones Garcia, who's a senior research analyst at IFPRI in Washington, D.C. Elliot's work focuses on human AI interaction and the socio-technical barriers shaping AI's effectiveness in agricultural advisory services. So, yeah, welcome to all of you. We can move to the next slide, maybe. Yeah. So, I think like just to give an example, just to also flag out, like this is a group of people coming mostly from the agricultural developmental sector. So I think like a lot of our context would be set in the agricultural development sector. So this is, I think, this is like the key problem that we're trying to define and sort of talk about in more detail today, which is the access impact gap. So ICT for D has for years and for decades made a powerful promise that the more you improve access to digital technologies, especially like mobile phones and cellular data and things like that, that has the capacity to reduce or sort of bridge the gap in disparity and access to agricultural advisory services, reduce delivery costs, and bring information to farmers who have historically been underserved. And while the point around access is largely accurate, I think what we are trying to showcase in these two graphs is that access is key, but it is not the only critical aspect that addresses the delivery of advisory services for last mile smallholder farmers. And the other crucial sort of component that comes here is while you have digital access and like the expanse of mobile phone accessibility has expanded over the last several decades now, does that automatically mean that all kinds of farmers, particularly women farmers or other marginalized communities, have the capacity to confidently and without hesitation or without any kind of inhibitions utilize those technologies or utilize the cell phones freely, basically? And the fact, so I think like what the graphs are trying to demonstrate is precisely that that is not the case. Access is critical, but there are other pieces to the puzzle, and I think that is where we begin our conversation. So with that, I think I can probably pitch the first sort of question, which is like on this key point. So why is access not enough? We've talked about digital tools as a way to reach more farmers, especially women and marginalized communities. But access to a phone or a platform does not necessarily mean that people can use it confidently, meaningfully, safely. And what evidence is there in your work individually and collectively, which probably can shed more light on what are the other missing pieces of the puzzle? Elliot, maybe you can start on this.
Oh, it's working good. Thanks very much for the kind introduction, Amin, and thank you all for coming today. Yeah, so I'd start by saying that obviously access is important, but it's only the first layer. Having a phone or a WhatsApp channel or an AI advisory tool available does not mean that the advice women receive reflects their realities or that they are in a position to act on it. One thing we see a lot in these agricultural advisory, more broadly, is that advice often assumes a generic farmer, a man, access to crops, access to cash, land rights. And I think the AI generated image here in the center is indicative of that, being this is basically the gender bias in real time. But women farmers face very different constraints, right? Less control over land, labor, cash. They often have having like hand-me-down phones. So even if the information is technically correct, it may not be relevant or actionable. And so this becomes especially important with AI and LLM generated advice. These systems can produce very confident responses, but they may not know these contextual constraints that a woman has, like decision-making power, whether she can travel to buy inputs, whether she has access to irrigation, or whether household norms allow her to implement any of the things she's been recommended. So my first answer is that while the issue is not only whether women can reach the tool, it is whether the tool can understand or be embedded in systems that understand the conditions under which that advice can become meaningful. And with that, I'll pass over to Nat.
Hello, good day. As my friend and brother Elliot introduced himself. So I just want to add that from experience, one of the major challenges is that women farmers are underrepresented in the data from testing and also, when it comes to design assumptions. So you notice that although women may have access to digital tools or AI advisory services, it does not really reflect the true outcome in terms of what they do. And these are some of the challenges that affect women farmers when it comes to using digital tools or AI advisory services. And it has become a huge barrier when it comes to engaging, women or women farmers when it comes to using digital services or AI tools. Most of the trained data or data sets that we normally collect, to develop our AI tools, you'll notice that it is predominantly linked to men farmers. That's one challenge. And also more linked to commercial farming. So the outcome of these AI products does not really showcase or reflect the exact needs of these women farmers. So coming from probably the way they assess land, it may give a different input to that, outcome. And these are some of the things that we need to correct and then see how best we can improve that. Thank you.
So good morning. It's very nice to be here in Kenya, and thank you for the opportunity and coming for this particular panel. Yes, access is a big question, and access to phone or devices does not mean that women has right level of digital literacy, confidence, and social permissions to use the digital information that she's getting access to. Our experience in our Plant-Wise Plus program and our leading digital skilling initiative, we came across women, especially in Ghana, where they were not even understanding to key the right information to get a right response. And it's not the case of Ghana, but it's the case of other countries as well, like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, where there was a digital literacy, but we could still see that there's a gap in the skills that they have. They might be able to download some apps like Facebook, but they didn't know that there are apps for agriculture information as well. And once they download the app, they were not even aware that how to update them or how to stop that background data that is running so that their phone can work more efficiently. So sometimes the woman would feel very confident, very comfortable, like it's okay that men can learn about digital platforms and let them know more about it. And they are very comfortable if men would steer it because they don't have confidence to access to the digital tools. So looking at this, it is very important that the digital skilling should be put in place so that they get the confidence as well as build their skills to access the digital tool. And through this, men should also be engaged to make them aware that women, if they access the digital information, it will be good for their own farms. And it is not the question of security or sharing the information, personal information that a woman can do. So, yes, to be more secured, it might be really important that it is extension-led initiative, that the women are comfortable to know how to use the digital tools. And in this case, we generally see group learning and using radio programmings are really effective for them to access the digital tools. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've also slightly ventured into like what I was thinking of as a follow-up here. But I think like when we are talking about agricultural development, advisory is like this sort of key piece of development. It's about like ensuring that last mile farmer has the right information they need to, it basically combat pest control, ensure like their soil health is not deteriorating. So advisory is critical. And I feel like AI or digital advisory has a certain sense of neutrality once it overcomes access. But from what I hear from the three of you and different elements of it, like Nat was talking about how the data is not representative enough on which some of these technologies are built, and hence the output that they generate may be biased. You were talking about like sociological or cultural sort of barriers that supersede pure like technical access. So while you have phones, you may not have the relevant know-how or permissions and other cultural limitations which inhibit it. So does this mean that we need to probably think of access in a different paradigm? Do we need to consider inclusivity and what inclusion would look like? You're talking about, including men in the understanding as well, but with a focus on gender sensitization. So yeah, like my question is that like, like, is it inclusion? Is it as simple as just adding more gender neutral or gender sensitive data, or is there something more that needs to be done, like more comprehensively in addressing inclusion that sort of bolsters access and therefore delivers a more holistic sort of product in terms of advisory for last mile farmers? Maybe this time we can go in the reverse. So Malvika, you can go first.
Right. Thank you for the question. Yes, inclusion. And if we are thinking of a meaningful inclusion, we must also acknowledge that women, they do not get called for some trainings or they are exposed to digital devices. So that is why the digital skilling, which can infuse the trust and confidence to use the digital tools, is really important. And when we talk about digital skilling, it is not that we want to straight away make them jump on the tools and start using the tools. It is the foundational digital skilling, which is really important for them to go step by step and understand what the digital skilling can do, and so that they are very comfortable with such things. Another aspect is comprehension and usability. Sometimes the content is available, but it is not communicated in a proper manner. It is very poorly communicated. And then the women are at loss because, like how I just took a case of Ghana, where and elsewhere also. But then, if this content is actually made available in form of voice or more visuals, then they will be more comfortable attempting it, using it, and trusting it. So another thing is about contextualization, which Elliot has just touched. Yes, the hyperlocal information, it should be available to them. So like how Nat, you also said about the commercial crops. So women are not actually interested in the crops that can bring cash to their family. They are more interested in the crops which can give nutrition to their family. So if the trained data which is used for AI is not in the aligned to these crops, then it is of no use to them. And another thing is like about actionable knowledge that they should be getting. So under our Plant-Wise Plus program, we do extension message workshop where women also participates and voice out what kind of actions for pest management, for example, is practical for them, where they don't need support from men always. And it is also that the inputs are available in vicinity or their local environment. So women-led networks and are really helpful. What you talked about, last mile delivery, that is really helpful in this case, and it can solve the problem of inclusion. Extension-led, like how we said that probably it is good that digital skilling should be done by local extension people, but it should not be given at once, at one stretch. That will become too much for the women farmer to absorb and learn. So maybe bit by bit. And also, this should not be a burden to the extension workers also. It should be kind of complementing their own workflows and not duplicating. So this is the way the women can be very easily included and in use of digital learning. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. Just to add to, I think you have touched on all the key points, but for me, I think the foundation or the fundamental aspects is the data sets. That is extremely important when you are collecting the data. So on the onset, you need to ensure that women are heavily represented or actively represented, because that is the game changer. So that aspect is super important. Now, also, we don't have to also treat women farmers as the end users. That is what we mostly do. We treat them as the end users. But the important aspect is for them to be part of the entire process from the beginning of the data collection or the data set to the end product of it. So more like they becoming a co-designer or being part of the co-designing process. I think for me, that is an extremely component that we mostly ignore in most of the work that we do, because training these data sets, the outcome of it will reflect the outputs of it. So if these outputs is not in line or does not represent the exact expectation of what you are looking for, then yes, you have developed a nice application, but the relevance or the importance of it do not reflect or make any impact to, you know, the woman farmer who is eager to use these tools. The other component that we also ignore is not the individual learning process. It's a combination of groups and then the community. That's something that we normally also ignore. For me, I think that part is also important, where you don't just bring the individual to improve on the application, but involve different communities to build the application so that it will be more inclusive than just building an application and using one persona to develop that. So I think those are some of the key points that we need to look at when we are looking at inclusivity in the digital space.
I feel you have probably, like, most of things have been covered.
Yeah, and I mean, that really has been a wonderfully exhaustive discussion so far. So actually what I was going to say is only repetitive. I will add though, just to explain this graph of what we've got on the screen. This is from some work that IFPRI have been doing with Farm Radio International. So what we've been working on is trying to, I hope everyone's familiar with the idea of low resource languages, right? So this is on Luganda. And so we were trying to build an automatic speech recognition model to work in Luganda speech. And up until very recently, the training data has been really hard to get hold of. Basically, there's very little online presence in comparison to Western languages. So that's why it's very easy to make these kind of AI things that talk in English, but not in the languages in Africa. So, but that's quickly changing, right? So there's a lot of money going into it suddenly. I can't remember a few different data sets here, but the most recent one is the Wahal data set from Google. And what they've done is created these data sets basically where you can train a model to work with these languages, but it's read speech made in a lab with good recording devices in a kind of one way of speaking the language that is not necessarily reflective of how farmers speak. So we then, if you see the green bar is their performance already. So that's word error rate, 20% of the words are wrong. We then tried it on Farm Radio International's call-ins, which they collect through their radio programming from farmers, with the idea being that we can understand massive amounts of farmers' opinions by them calling into the radio program. These data sets clearly fall completely flat. They don't work at all. I can't even see it from here, but it's something like 90% word error rate, right? They don't work at all. And what we've been trying to do is fine-tune them on Farm Radio's data to try and make them more reflective of the realities in which people speak and more representative of them. So often the read speech might just be men, for example. Here there might be women as well. But there are other factors like code switching, noise in the background, accent, dialect, jargon they use. And so I think this is quite promising work in terms of not necessarily in agency, as we'll come to in the next slide, but as Nat mentioned, involving women from the beginning and trying to make things work from that are reflective of the ground is incredibly important in comparison to this massive promise of these data sets these hyperscalers are releasing that just don't work in reality. Thanks.
So we've covered maybe like the limitations of access as a metric to solely determine efficacy. We've talked about inclusion of marginalized communities with a considerable focus on women farmers to improve the quality of agricultural advisory. I think this sort of is a nice sequitur to what is definitely always crucial for any kind of developmental assessment, which is impact. And I'm sure that is important for like irrespective of which sector of the development field you come from. I think it's crucial to determine impact. So I think when you're talking about gender responsive agricultural advisory, what should constitute impact? We often get words like, oh, adoption and scalability is critical. But my personal sense is that that is also because it is to some extent quantifiable and therefore subject to a certain kind of interpretation. But we are talking about sociological barriers. We're talking about like including certain categories of farmers, especially women farmers, throughout the life cycle of AI innovation, right? From like data collection, conceptualization of problem and things like that. In that sense, do you feel that impact should also assess more qualitative aspects like user confidence, user agency? I think in terms of AI, there's always a term around trust and the trust deficit as a counter to it. So is there a way to build a measurement qualitatively or quantitatively to determine the trust in a technology and cumulatively determine impact of gender responsiveness? You can take first this time.
Yes, so you have nailed it. For me, I think the true impact is to reflect whether these technologies contribute to greater confidence, participation, and for me, most importantly, long-term behavioral change. And one area that we hardly overlook has to do with the communication platforms, which we don't pay a lot of attention, especially radio. If you go to rural settings or communities and all that, one of the key mediums that they trust most is radio. So for me, radio can be used to shape, social norms and also drive adoption and acceptance. Because if you want to introduce digital tools or AI, advisory services, you need to run it through a medium that will let people accept these digital tools or digital services that you are introducing. And most often we shy away from the communication platforms, and we then think introducing or developing the application will automatically be accepted by the community, which is a no-no. So for me, I think one of the key medium that we need to really pay attention to is using communication platforms to disseminate information as to how people can use these digital tools so that that acceptance will be, established, and also build that confidence aspect. The one last aspect also is people shouldn't see the communication medium or platform as a competition between their application or their digital tools with those existing or traditional medium that we have, but more as a complementary approach to executing or utilizing those digital tools that you have, so that at the end of the day, you can achieve the impact that you are looking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Nat. That was wonderful. I think I'll just start by responding to you, and I agree that with this new era of large language models and AI, it's like we're reinventing the wheel. And there's a huge issue with how these things are being scaled and brought to the more people, and it tends to ignore the fact that there's an extension system that's been in place for decades, and that using systems like Farm Radio is one of the key ways to do that, is by recognizing that we are all working together with a shared normative goal, that there shouldn't really necessarily be a competition to see who can serve farmers best necessarily, which often seems to be the case. I'd also like to just give a quick shout out, because we have Mariette McCampbell in the audience, and she wrote a wonderful paper called about problematizing inclusion, which I think has shaped my thinking a lot, in the sense that inclusion doesn't necessarily always have a positive impact, right? It leads to new dependencies, or like expectations, or like de-skilling could also be a thing, right? If we're particularly with LLMs, and if they don't meet women's needs, and that then undercuts the funding to the other extension networks they would have got, that could be a huge problem. We should try and think about that in advance. I then want to respond to Amin. So I think that these things aren't necessarily, it's not that they're necessarily qualitative, they are quantifiable. I think the issue is we've had like a kind of path dependency in which the only way we learn from farmers is through the failure of previous technologies, right? We only ever do adoption studies based on metrics that we think are true. We need to move away from that kind of economics view of looking at things and try and look at what farmers need. And then we can develop standards and benchmarks by which we can actually understand and measure how good these technologies are. I'm actually speaking at another webinar on this afternoon. But yeah, I mean, practically speaking, some of these could be like, how were women involved in the design process? Did this lead, were there like languages and things included? But also downstream as to like, how does this actually lead to meaningful decision making, etc. But thank you.
Thanks. Yes, all the work that we do should lead to impact, and how do we assess it? I fully agree with both you and Elliot and Nat. So I want to support what I say through some short stories, actually, that we could see on the ground while we drove our digital literacy campaigns in 5 countries in 2025. So what we were looking was for early changes, but we were looking how women are getting transformed from user to leadership role or something that they could share with their peers in their direct environment. And we could see that, yeah, some of the women, they just thought that mobiles that they had were only for entertainment. And after the skilling, digital skilling that we had taken up in these 5 countries, that is Uganda, Ghana, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan in 25, we could see that most of them were really happy to know how they can safeguard their phones and how they can put up a secured password so that their teenage children cannot pick them up and use it for their own interest. And they felt more confident using these after being skilled through the literacy courses that we were taking up, because these literacy courses were made on the UNESCO framework of global competences in digital, like how to keep the phone carefully, how to use the information responsibly, and where to get the information from. So even the IPM facilitators, like we had in Nepal, the community-based facilitators, they were so thrilled after they did this skilling. They said, "Oh my God, we were just referring to the, the publications which were almost obsolete, but now it feels as if we have agricultural doctor in our fingertips, and we can access to these digital tools and give advice to the farmers." So these were some of the very interesting stories that we came across, and we could see the impact of the initiative that we had undertaken. This year, we have also added 4 more countries here: Kenya and Zambia, India, and Sri Lanka. So we look forward to create such kind of stories which can give us confidence that skilling may have an impact, especially to the women farmers and IPM facilitators at ground level. Thanks.
I think your point around like training them and like letting them do, there's this interesting Chinese proverb which I always think about, which is like, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, but I do and I know. And I think that's perhaps also very relevant for the way we are talking about skilling. Like, it's not just about like running them through, oh, this is the technology, get familiar with the interface, etc. I think it's more about like building sensitization at a more foundational level and how things work. Like you said, like changing paradigms that cell phones are just for entertainment, but no, they have a lot more utility to it. This is very interesting. I think this is a good point to sort of break into if there are any questions from the audience. Yes.
Thank you very much. So my name is William Durban, and I work for Opportunity International. So we do have an advisory board, AI advisory board that we are giving to our farmers. And you do mention about having, sort of gender influenced content, which I think is really important. So my question, where do we find that content? Who is providing it? Who is updating it? And how can we access it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Adalbert, but you can simply call me Ada, and I work for Welthungerhilfe. It's a German international NGO, and I'm actually based in Burundi. So my question, of course, I'm leading a digital innovation for Zero Hunger project, which is implemented across 6 Francophone countries. And I'm also leading a digital literacy program, which is implemented across 13 countries, Francophone and Anglophone countries. And the challenge, yes, I totally agree with everything that you've said, but my own challenge is still to know exactly what can be done to improve the phone accessibilities, because that's the problem that we are actually facing. We can develop all the digital solutions that we want using all the approaches, human-centered design, and so on and so forth. But what can be done to really help people to get access to these digital tools? Thank you. That's my own question.
Thank you so much. My name is Precious Naturinda. I come from Uganda and I work for Women's Media Initiative for Sustainable Environment. So thank you so much. I wanted to know more about digital skilling. One of the challenges that you are not talking about is the issue of language. Most of the information is in English, and you know, most of our women didn't go far in terms of education. So how are you doing it when you find that most of the digital is using English and most of them, they don't know the language? Thank you so much. And I was happy when you mentioned the issue of involving the radios, because in most cases they still use the local language. So how do we integrate the digital technology into our traditional radios and other platforms? Thank you.
I'll just come up. So does anyone want to first take the question around data content access, basically?
I mean, good.
So just wanted to let you know that about the content you said, where the AI developers can access and how we develop it. So I mentioned about extension message workshops that Gabby conducts under PlantWise Plus. So we are doing this from 2010 onwards, and we develop pest management decision guides in 34 countries. So that is the kind of data or the content that we have done with in-country experts and participation of women. So this is all in our PlantWise Plus knowledge bank, and it is an open access source. And not only that, we have also put some of our content on an open platform, Hugging Face. And this is for the AI developers to access the content and make use of it. Because we believe that this is the trusted content which has come from country itself and with a very participatory approach. Thank you.
Do you mind if I go next? I think this will fit together quite well. Is this working? Yeah. With gendered content, yeah, I think we've just done some work in India to kind of trying to understand. I think, sure, we can figure out gender sensitive content, but I think also again, caveat with like, that's very specific. What do women actually need? Like with design interventions with what specific people in specific places to make things, and content that can fit that is very necessary. Turning to this question about access, I think so. The presentation was meant to like push against that, right? And I'll start by saying that I think why do we want to create access when we know that the tools themselves don't make impact anyway? Like we're assuming that digitalization fixes things, which it doesn't. And that actually what we usually say when we talk about access is like a problem of whether or not people are adopting, right? So there's obviously an agency on the part of the farmer that sure they can somehow access, but they also have to say, I want this. And maybe rather than questioning like, why aren't people accessing it, is have some kind of reflexivity and question ourselves and say like, maybe just the tools we're making aren't very good and that people don't want them. And that's like, instead of being like, just measuring adoption in a way that like is a proxy for like this like assumption that farmers will just get better if they have access. And I think that speaks again also is to like, rather than like keep making these things, like trying to figure out like accessibility is like a logistical issue in which we try and like get people the thing. Why not like jump off the back of people like Farm Radio who already have like 40 million people listening on a weekly basis? They have a very strong network of people, and then like these channels are actually there and are not a technical issue. It's a systemic trust issue, right?
Hello? Yeah, I just want to add to that. I think you're looking at is it content access, right? Looking for access. So for me, one way to approach it is for you to look at it in two ways. We have the broadcast approach and then the narrowcasting approach, and I'll explain that. Now, you are looking for content. It depends on your timelines. Now, if you're looking for content, the first thing that you need to establish is what do your audience or your beneficiary trust? So that is very important. Trust. Now, if you are looking, let me use the rural setting, for example, they mostly trust radio, right? So radio can be served as the broadcasting medium of disseminating information. So you are looking for information, but first of all, you need to set your agenda and push the information out. Now, for you to get that content is where you narrowcast that particular information back to you, i.e. receiving feedback to that particular information or set of content that you are looking for. So for us at Farm Radio, we do radio programming. And for us to get feedback from listeners, what we have done is to study what they are comfortable with or what they trust. So our traditional way of narrowcasting approach, which a lot of people sometimes shy away from, is using interactive voice response, that's IVR, for people to record their voices, express their views on a particular topic that is being discussed so that you can receive those feedback. You can also introduce different approaches using WhatsApp and different medium to narrowcast those particular information. So one, the key objective of what you want to disseminate has been reached or has gotten to your end users. And then the content for you to develop, the application that you are building has also been received through the narrowcasting approach. So you can explore those ways to get that. Another approach is for you to look at community engagement or community champion, where in most communities, they have town halls, sometimes that they meet and all that, and create a conversation. And creating those conversations needs to be recorded so that you can use those content to develop your digital tool or your AI tool that you want to, build or develop, depending on where you are looking at, whether you're looking at automated speech recognition or natural language processing, depending on the content that you are looking at, you can explore these different ways, and then we can get that. But we can also, we have worked with IFPRI, and then the three of us we can support you and then look at how best we can explore that. Yeah, thank you.
Mismatch between traditional language and
Yeah.
How you bridge that?
Yes. So how to bridge that gap? You see, the AI tool, see it as a toolbox. So here, what exactly do you want to achieve at the end of the day? So one, if you want to establish conversation, then you will have to introduce the right AI tool. So for example, you need to, if you want to establish a conversation, then here you are looking at automated speech recognition, right? Where you basically transcribe the local language into text, okay? So it's in an audio form and you're transcribing it into local text, right? But there's no way you can analyze that. There's no way you can analyze or get insight from that particular information that you have received. You need to process that particular data set that you have received. That is where natural language processing comes in, where you translate the local language into English, and then you can analyze that. So it depends on the level, the layer that you are looking at. If you want to deal directly with the end users, then obviously you need to go in for the right AI tool for you to use. That's automated speech recognition. And to get that data set, then obviously you need to also establish a conversation, as I indicated, in different mediums to build that particular, AI tool that you want to develop. So it depends on the area that you want to focus in, and then you need to design it in such a way that it achieves the end game for you. Thank you.
Okay. Quickly and keep your responses short. Okay. I don't think you have that. Okay, so can we first, second, third, can't open it. I saw 3 hands first, yeah, so yeah, that's it. Sorry, the others will have to go outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Susan Maswili. I work for People in Need. But I wanted to extend to the question that my brother mentioned. I think it has not been answered yet. It's about resources. Like we see good dashboards, we see applications being used in our smartphones, but we go beyond that because for people who are underserved, they do not have these gadgets that you're talking about. So where do we go so that we can be able to get this data that we want? I am happy about what you're doing about the radio, but then can we go even beyond that? Because I see even the using USSD is also part of technology. And also the other like button phones are also part of technology. How do we utilize that to make sure that everybody is now covered because we do not have everybody having these smart gadgets? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for all your insightful experiences, sharing those experiences. My name is Rieko Shibata. I'm from University of Reading, and I think a lot of your work really resonates with what we are also doing in different countries. My question is, I think you talked about like lots of digital tools and AI tools, but I think many of you are talking about communication platform and group learning. That is a key to kind of motivate or encourage farmers to get together to have that kind of agency. Anyway, like those farmers, I feel like they need agency to try to access to information. I think many organizations, they developed many useful digital tools, but what motivates them to access to those information? So that is just the information, and how does the information be transformed from information to knowledge? And I think Farm Africa, you are talking about like a communication platform, and it's like a platform. So it's not only radio, it's not only, let's say like smartphone, but it's a combination. So how do you combine all those kind of ecosystem of communication, diversity that is preferred by people?
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. Katarzyna Sislik, University of Manchester. A lot of the very excellent discussion has been focused on, the issue of adoption, and utility and all that. But you also represent very excellent organizations. So I wanted to ask about responsibility and accountability when it comes to integrating AI tools, especially within the advisory systems, right? So I have the feeling that when it comes to these tools, the responsibility and accountability becomes somewhat diluted between algorithms, institutions, right, and data, which Nathaniel very nicely brought up. So how do you see that kind of shaping up the work that you do, right? How to do it responsibly? What if the advisory information is biased, is incorrect, right? Who is responsible? The black box of the algorithm. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. I don't actually have a question. I just wanted to sort of respond to what you said earlier. No, it's relevant to everybody. I just wanted to note that for anyone who's interested in access to devices, our organization works on that. And it's all about reducing the cost. So if it's anything related to affordability, come find me.
Great. Thank you. This coming back. Do you have anything to add on the access piece since you have strong opinions about accessibility?
Which one?
Like both the questions that were asked here and the gentleman before, where he's asking like it's.
Yeah, again, I don't think it's the problem is not access, it's about the quality of the things we're making. And I think that if no one's got gadgets, use radio because people have radio.
Okay.
Yes, so this also ties with the question of Uganda, how digital skilling was more relevant. And I think intermediary led group discussions are really helpful, and also shared devices, because that also solves the problem of having less devices around. So, our ecosystem of plant doctors who are sitting at the ground level and interacting with the farmers on day-to-day basis also helps quite a lot for the localized context.
I have a lot of thoughts on your question around responsible usage, but any takers out of you on that question?
I'll go very quickly. I think again, Amin's the expert in this, but I think the transition. I think there should be a forewarning about the idea that human in the loop is somehow a solution to it. I just think it's one of the most problematic things. We're going to start turning Accenture's workers into data labelers. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's very responsible. I think that, and it will just depreciate the quality of services we're providing.
Yeah, so I think, yes, that's very important. And also in terms of linking the right expertise to the right data sets. So to put it that way, a lot of organizations wants to be jack of all trades. They want to handle every single, thing. And just for everyone to know that AI is a means to an end, not the end itself. So it is important to bring on board the right people to support in terms of building these different tools, and then basically following the right practices, that is out there that everyone needs to follow. One other aspect I want to add, that when it comes to AI, the weight is open source, but the most important aspect has to do with the systems, which are not open source. So where to host it, the memory that you need, the processing and all that, all these things are not open source. It's just the weights. So you find a lot of weights available. And if you flip it to the coding aspect, I'm talking about the open source, basically if I say the weights, I'm talking about like the open source and all that. Now the weights are available on Hugging Face and all that. Those ones can be seen by everyone. But the most important aspect, which plays an integral role in the AI world, has to do with the resources that powers all these things. Now, just to touch on the different medium that you mentioned. Now, it is important for you to, first of all, broadcast the information to thousands of people so that the feedback will now indicate which medium that they prefer. It is important, because without that, it will be difficult for you to make that determination as to which medium you would like to channel or push the information to your end users. So broadcasting is extremely important. And I don't want to limit it to radio, but any medium that helps you to broadcast your information to thousands or millions of people is very, very key if you want to generate the right information for your digital tool or your AI components.
The social media companies have been doing for so long, not in the best of spirits. Last 15 to 20 seconds each, if you have any closing remarks. Otherwise, we can.
Nothing really. It was wonderful. I learned a lot. Thanks, guys, so much. I hope everyone else enjoyed it too.
For me, I think the end game is collaboration and partnership.
Okay.
And I think collaboration is definitely the key, but also at the ground level, how we are interacting with the farmers, there's somebody there to handhold them is also very important.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for the speakers? And for yourself, thank you for coming in, attending this on the first day. I think that's a close. And if there are any follow-up discussions, please take them outside, asynchronous, offline.